Ayin Beis, we're up to the middle of page 145, chapter 77. Middle of the Discourse 20, Shuva Yisroel. This chapter is still in the process of explaining Ayin Beis in Yotzer, which is all part of understanding how Malchus, how the 5 levels of the 5 makifim, the 5 transcendent forces, impact existence. So first he discussed them in the macrocosm as they were before the Tzimtzum, Malchus the Ein Sof, and now he's discussing it Malchus the Atzilus. And as a result, goes through these different levels. So we spoke about how Malchus is, so what is in the middle of Ayin Beis is the discussion of how in Avodah, in our service, how we are infused in a state where we begin with distance and a state of lowliness and don't have the power to initiate our own efforts to reach above, and we need the strength of Torah and so on. Here we're talking now of how become Ayin is the level how Malchus becomes mature, the maturity of Malchus, that it has that power, the ability to reach the level of Imi, of Binah. So in Kabbalistic terms it means Binah is informing Malchus. That's what he's discussing in this chapter 77. It adorns Malchus, like the Zohar says, that the mother adorns the daughter with kishutin, with jewelry. And that turns her into Ayin. So what is that in Avodah? So he explained that's how the source of the soul, Mazla, which is Binah in this case, how the soul is above the body, how it affects the soul within the body and gives it strength and gives it power. And he explained how this is all about B'kashta Misham, that the spark of the divine spark gets lost, like a lost soul in the animal soul and in all kinds of desires and thoughts and speech and action that are not appropriate. And from that, and from the depths of those constraints, from those dire constraints, from those dire straits, the soul cries out. Then he spoke about how the soul cries, not just the divine soul, but the animal soul cries out. And that he called desperation. When you're helpless, hopeless, when you feel hopeless, when you feel yush, that in turn can bring you to the deepest type of cry, because you've hit rock bottom. He's identified rock bottom. So it breaks your heart to the point that transforms you from one extreme to the next. And he says, these are the kishutin, these are the jewelry that the mother adorns the child. That when a person hits that type of place, both from the perspective of the animal, the divine soul feeling distance, and that type of compassion, and the animal soul feeling hopeless, that in turn evokes the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, the 13 attributes of compassion. Earlier he said that, and I think this is a key point that I may have not emphasized enough, when we say in Birchus Yotzer, we say Hamer La'aretz, so the context of it, as I was looking up in the sources, is first we talk about, you have a siddur here, we talk about first how God is beyond everything. And we said Elkei Elam is Atzmos, the Beira Elam. But to go even a step before that, he says like this. It's just the expression in Birchus Yotzer. And just for the record, I think that though he's been focusing on Baruch Sha'amar and Birchus Yotzer, this is the beginning of Psukkah de Zimra and the end of it. Because in the process of davening, this is a key component of setting the stage before one goes into Shema and to Shem Neser, which are higher levels of contemplation. So by Amer La'aretz, the expression goes like this. It says like this: Amer La'aretz L'adarim Aleh, the one who radiates earth and those that live on it. Barachamim, with compassion. Ubetuvim Mechadish, and he in his goodness he renews the creation always, all the time. Ma Rabba Masecha, and so on. Then he says, Hamelach Hameremim Levade Me'oz. We actually learned this earlier. The king who's exalted on his own from beginning of time, from the beginning. And then he's Hamashubach, Hamafur, Hamasnasi Meselam. He's beloved and he's Mafur and then exalted in another form. Hamasnasi Meselam. And he's beyond existence, exalted, elevated. Then he goes, Elokeilam Barachamecha Rabin. Then he continue. This was an introduction. Then he says, Elokeilam, the God that is beyond the universe. Barachamecha Rabim Racham Aleinu, with your great compassion, have compassion on us. Adenu Zenu, and so on. Yeah. So here he hasn't explained the first opening, but when you read it now properly, basically it's like this. And this is a beautiful concept. This comes from the Alter Rebbe. The source of this I found is a maimer of Yisroel, a maimer of Ekev, Tovkuf Samach Vov, in Likutei Torah, I'm sorry, no, not Ekev, Shlach. V'at Yisroel, v'ato Yigl no Koyach Adnai. So the Mittler Rebbe explains it, and the Rebbe Rashab explains it here at length. So it goes like this. When you're dealing with the essence, the deeper you go into understanding how God is beyond us, so I've been explaining that teaches us that type of relationship, a good interface. We have to know that God is beyond us, and then we create a close relationship. But there's another aspect. By knowing how far God is beyond us, he said before, the fi'erech, haremus, that's how the shiflus. When the higher God is, the more compassion there is on us. The more distant we are, the more we deserve compassion. And there he brings there actually two types of compassion. You could have the compassion, let's say, of a wealthy person and a poor person. So both are recognized that this poorer person needs compassion and needs charity. They both are aware of their distance. But then there's a young child who doesn't even know how low he is. So that's a Rahmanas that's even deeper. Which may explain that word from the Rebbe Rashab.
How dependent he is on how the child.
No, he doesn't know how low he is. He's not aware that he's just a child. He's not aware that I have less than you. A pauper is aware, so he asks, or he's aware of it. Then there's someone who's not even aware, like a child, and there the compassion is far greater. The Rebbe Rashab once said to the Frierdiker Rebbe, it says, you're supposed to have compassion to everybody, chutz m'sheit. Asla racham alav. You're not supposed to have compassion to a fool. You know. So the Rebbe Rashab once said, look how much compassion you have to someone that the Torah itself says you shouldn't have compassion to. The Rebbe Rashab said. So what's the explanation of that? So maybe the explanation is based on this. It says, Sheita eina margish. A fool doesn't sense anything. That's why you don't have compassion, because you want him to wake up on his own. But the truth is, the lower he is, the more compassion you need. So it's not the compassion of spoiling him or replacing his effort. But the idea is that the deeper we understand Atzmo Salikelam, the greater is the Rachamecha Harabim that comes from there. So therefore now, as he's saying now that we, in Adenu Zenu, we come and say Racham Aleinu, which, as he said, was Keser Malchus, that is the Reimamus of Malchus, lifting up Malchus to a higher level, that becomes Adenu Zenu, that we, in our sense of distance and loneliness, our pain of that awakens the deepest forms of compassion. And that is Binah adorning Malchus in Kabbalistic terminology. That's the service, the work of drawing down the power that wakens up and opens up the heart to bolt, to escape its displacement and captivity. Okay. This comes from Binah, as he says. The mitzat shesh neshama yesh ba b'chinas harotzit b'chol me'etcha be'etzem zel b'chinas ima be'etzem shesh is gal neshama. That's Adenu Zenu. That the Tchar Lashon. I'm just reading straight from here. And on the contrary, this now doesn't only reach deeper. This doesn't only reach in a deep place. It reaches deeper, even higher than the desire itself from the divine place. So it reaches the depth because of that. In a way, it reaches deeper than the Ratzon that is the level of Racham Aleinu. Okay. Well, Eidya Shleimer, he says, in a second way to explain this empowering of Malchus into Binah, he says that's the Veda of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, That Kabbalah Shel Malchus Shemaim all year round is more of a silent acceptance. We accept. And the focus is on the work we do. We learn, we daven, we try to feel, and so on. Rosh Hashanah, the work is on the Kabbalah Shel itself. Like he says, it's primis is galas nafshis, to effort of actually devoting and committing, focusing on the devotion to God, focusing on the Malchus. So, bottom line is that this has, as he says, an advantage over the passion and excitement of avodas and nefesh, let's say, through Ava. Because there, anything that has inspiration, that has excitement, means that it's more revelation and more closeness. But Kabbalah Shel Malchus is more of a dedication. If you're talking about qualitative commitment, Kabbalah Shel Malchus has that. One second. Right. Because Kabbalah Shel is completely setting yourself aside and dedicating yourself. So what is the hamshach of Binah into Malchus in this interpretation? So here he says, this is that you should actually feel it and sense it. This effort. That is hamshach of Binah l'Malchus Kabbalah Gam Kimchnis is galus primi. Because Kabbalah Shel, as I said, its downside is that it's more like a pilot flame that's beneath the surface. You don't focus on it. It's just an acceptance. I accept. Even though on a microcosmic level, every day we say Moidani, but overall the focus every day is not I'm renewing my contract with God. Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, you're going back to the Kabbalah Shel of you're renewing basically Kablu Malchusai. You're renewing your contract with God. And to make that revealed, because you see all year round it's not revealed. What's revealed is the spirals, like you said. So you see a person studying Torah with passion, a person davening, a person working on his midas or something like that. But that Kabbalah Shel should be with that type of passion and gilui. That comes from Binah. That's the additional. That's Adeinu Zenu. And actually we say it every day because we want to have it also there. So Malchus that also Malchus shouldn't just be a silent like faith or something. You should feel that type of passion. That comes both ways. Either because of the sense of distance, so we have the two interpretations. Either the distance and concealment of Malchus creates a deep thirst. Or that you reveal that type of commitment. So Malchus really has almost two extremes. One is when you feel very distant and hopeless. That awakens, that's the Binah that gives you power, that adorns you. Or it's on the other end where Kabbalah Shel is revealed and dynamic and so on. And that's where we stopped. Okay. And again, we're talking all about the effects of makifim. So now he's going to go to the rest of the expressions. So makif of yechida is rachem aleinu, and this is what we've been talking about. Adeinu Zenu is makif of chaya. Well, chaya is already closer to the primius. It's actually giving us strength in our primius. If we go back, second. Yeah. If you go back to page 136, he explains it. If you want to know where exactly he spells out the 5 levels, he says the 5 makifim naran chai, a makav rish makav the yechideh, shu b'chinas makav the rotzon poshet. That's v'hoya elam, baruch shamar, and it's rachem aleinu here. Then he goes, the next one is makav chai, who's adeinu zenu. Baruch Hu. Right in the middle of the page, smack in the middle. On 136. And now he's applying all that to the makifim here in Malchus.
He says right here, Yegel Beis makifim.
Yeah. Yeah, but there he's still speaking before the Tzimtzum, that levels. Now he's speaking it all in Malchus, how Malchus of Atzilus becomes the makifim of, first of all, I just said makif chaya, that's that, in Atzilus itself. And that now becomes the makifim of the three worlds, Bria, Tzur, Asiyah, which he's going to explain now. Remember, all this is to explain how the transcendent makifim impact our lives. That's the context. So let's continue reading now. I'm reading from middle of page 145. So he says like this. Okay. And now, Adeinu Zenu, that's the makif of Malchus Atzilus, K'mashiba Atzilus, the way it's in Atzilus. And she affects and impacts the general souls in Binyanim Hanal, in the things we discussed earlier. Like we just discussed, the two elements, how it impacts. So remember, the Keser of Atzilus, if you remember what it impacts, anybody remembers? Keser Atzilus impacts us that we should have Rusa Deliba, the desire in the heart, Ava Mushateres, awakens thoughts of Shuva, and so on. Keser now of Malchus, the next level, because that's Adeinu Zenu, meaning, well, actually, Lav Dafke, because now, 1 second, that was, he said, that was his word of Shuva, of Malchus, of Atzilus. Kesser of Atzilus, 1 second. 1 second. Kesser of, 1 second. Ak is the Bria de Chlolos. What? No. Ak there is misgoveinu. Yeah, right, correct. But the effect of Atzilus, he said, was Rusa Deliba. How does that compare to this? I'm not sure. We have to think that through. But anyway, but the bottom line is that he spoke now about the makif of Adeinu Zenu.
Right, exactly. That's tremendous power we get from the makif. That comes to Binah.
I don't know what you're talking about. What Binah? Which Binah?
In other words, don't you say in the words that power given, that's why we call it the Zayn our strength, that we have this tremendous strength that we have to carry out through the making from the given Binah. That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, but that doesn't help us. I'm trying to establish, after he spoke about the makif of Tehiri law, makif of Tehiri makif of Atzilus, that's when he got into this whole discussion and started explaining now the makifim after Atzilus, Bria, Tzur, Asiyah. But he began with Adeinu Zenu. Okay, we'll go back to it. I'll see how he says here. Okay, so bottom line is Adeinu is still not Atzilus, and it affects the Neshomo in the matters that we spoke about. He's now actually concluding what he began, if you want to know, chapter 69, page 129. That's where that discussion is now concluding. So we're talking about a good almost 20 pages earlier. So there he says, if you look there, he says that after we talk about Kesser Atzilus and its impact, there's a Kesser that he says for the world of Bria. And to understand that, he says that's what we say, that this is all talking about Malchus of Atzilus. And then he went back and started explaining Baruch Shamar. So I'm just pointing that out. So now he's going back there. He's saying the following. So in other words, what the thing that needs to be addressed, which I'm not addressing now, but I'm leaving a question on the table. How do you move from Kesser of Atzilus to where does Adeinu Zenu fit in? Is that the same as Kesser of Atzilus, like he said, the same impact of Rusa Deliba? So I don't really think it is mamish. I think it's one level above. Or is it? Or is it the same level exactly? I'm not really clear. That we'll have to establish. Whether Adenu Zenu is the same thing as Keser Vatzilus, Keser Malchus. Because now he's going over to Bri, Yitzir, and Asiyah. I didn't hear what you said. But if you just read the words here, he's saying that's its effect. It's to have Rusa Liba. It says the same words.
Exactly. It comes out and it shows up as a way of bitterness. It shows up as a way of soul.
I don't know. He's using the same words here, but he can't add another level because there's only that many levels in the davening. So that's the question on the table here. Where's Adenu Zenu fit in the context from Keser Vatzilus, and now we're moving to Bria. So we'll see. We'll read on, and then we'll go back and we'll see. I'm just putting it on the table. That's the question I have. It doesn't seem like there's an extra level here.
I think it could be clarified itself.
Tzur misgoveinu, mogen, yisheinu, misgav. Now, however, what it says afterwards, Tzur misgoveinu, mogen, yisheinu, misgav. Hu hamshach bepratis haneshama is the biyah. This is already now the transmission in detail into the souls of Bri, Yitzir, and Asiyah. So Adenu Zenu is a general makif of Malchus Atzilus in Atzilus that affects the general neshamas. Now these three are already getting into the specifics of the souls that are in Bri, Yitzir, Asiyah. It's getting closer to our level here. And we'll soon discuss the difference between all these elements here. Because in the souls there are many different levels. And in general they are nefesh, ruach, neshama. There is a person whose service, his primary service, I say primary, it doesn't say primary, but it means primary service is in the level of nefesh, levad.
Nefesh type of service.
Yeah. Let's just define the words. We know there's 5 names for neshama, we spoke about it. Nefesh, ruach, neshama, chay, yechida. They're not just names, different names for the same thing. They're different levels and dimensions. So generally speaking, nefesh is the lowest. It usually refers to nefesh ha-mechaya, nefesh ha-chiyunis. It's like biological life. That's part of the soul that gives us physical life. The fact that you can move and so on. So it's like the lowest dimension is the lowest level of the electricity of the soul.
The life force.
Yeah. Like say someone said biologically, medically, what does it mean to be alive? That would be nefesh. The difference between life and death, God forbid, and so on. Ruach, generally speaking, is also emotional life. You could have a vegetable, for example, who's physically alive, medically alive, but is emotionally numb. So that's ruach. Neshama adds intellectual life. Basically, in other words, nefesh would be nehi, asiyah, within Atzilus itself, let's say. Then you have ruach is midas, chagas. He is just basic functions, just functionality. And Chabad is a neshama. Where's chay yechida? Chay yechida would be keser. Chay would be arich, and atik, and yechida would be atik. That's generally the picture. We've been traveling our way down, and davening it is rachem, v'rachamecha harabim. Rachem aleinu is makif of the makif now. Each of these 5 levels has a makif, a transcendent force that gives it power. I'm just explaining this. And what's the transcendent? So Rachem Aleinu is the transcendent force that gives us the power that he spoke about earlier, that have compassion on us, which in Malchus is the level of Keser Malchus. That's where the Ani gives power to the Ayin. Where when someone is a very exalted level, they have compassion, Rachem Aleinu, and they elevate like Teva. Nature is elevated. So Malchus is beginning to be elevated from its so-called lonely or isolated place. Adenu Zenu is that makif now translates a makif of Chaya, which is what? Makif of Yechid is generally more distant, like a makif Harochik. So Yom Kippur, for example. Makif Chaya is the 4th makif, which is usually on Shabbos and Yontif, when we'd say 4 tefillas. So it's closer to us. So it has already a connection to the Pnimi. And its impact is what we've been discussing at length here. Adenu Zenu. That's the impact of Binah on Malchus. Now we go further. That's Yechid and Chay. Now he's going into Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. So he's saying there's different types of souls. There's Nefesh souls, as you just said. There main Aved, there's Nefesh. What does this mean? Like I just said, just like Nefesh is, what does it function? In Aved too. These are executors. Not executioners. Executors. It's like Malcolm Gladwell writes in The Tipping Point. He writes there are 4 types of people. I know, very rarely you're going to hear in the same breath Ayin Beis and Malcolm Gladwell. But I take a certain glee in making these connections because dir b'tachteinim. So he says there are 4 types of people: minders, finders, binders, and grinders. So we're talking now about the grinders. And he says no one has all 4, by the way, in his strength. What do you think about that? Minders, binders, people who make those connections. Finders know how to just find the right people. He says the tipping point is dependent on the finders. Not on anything, because the finders this. He says in the world there are a very small percentage of people that you make them, they bring you to a few thousand people. He says that's who you want if you want to get a tipping point. And that's a key, finding those type of people. Because it's interesting how he broke the population into 4 categories. The minders strategize and this, but the finders, you say, make the connections. The binders are actually just like the people who close the connection. They're good at, but the finders are the ones that know who's who. They've got the lists, so to speak. Huh? They've got the databases. So grinders are the nefesh is asiya. The main avodah is asiya, in action. In fulfilling mitzvahs in actuality. And this person, this type of is not possible, is not shaykh, he's not capable of any comprehension in his mind, his pilus midah shabalev, and excitement of emotions in his heart. Only to action itself.
Also today's generation,
In 1 second, he doesn't say it, so I'm not going to say it. You want to say that? Fine. Where do you fit yourself in?
I'm saying because all the generations were higher than Shuva, Ruach, nefesh was already old and valid. Now we're holding nefesh.
Okay. V'gam ha'asiyu rak b'derech avedus eved b'kabbalah sel. And also the asiya is in a way only like avedus eved, a work of a servant, b'kabbalah sel. Not because of appreciation or anything, but because with just kabbalah sel, the yoke. Accepting the yoke. These are exact words, which means really just commitment. He doesn't know the purpose of the mitzvah. In other words, besides the fact that he doesn't have chabad and chagas in his aveda, even the asiya, it's just asiya, not even the kavanah in the asiya. He doesn't know the kavanah in the mitzvah itself. So you see, so in the mitzvah, there's beyond the kavanah mitzvah, which is partially a person who has comprehension and feelings. In the mitzvah itself, there's also kavanah. No. I'm sorry. Any day kavanas mitzvah mashanim shechad. He doesn't know the intention of the mitzvah and what it transmits. Every mitzvah touches, like he just touches the buttons. He doesn't know he touches the button of shachas of this or that or that. He's a button presser. Ki'im shenitztav la'seisa. He knows that he was commanded to do v'tzarech la'seisa, and therefore he has to do. U'mishum zeh oises hamitzvah, and because of that he does the mitzvah. Right. That's nefesh. V'yesh. Now there's another level. Shavidos, you see here, this you're going to hear a real blueprint, a real chart. V'yesh shavidos b'chinas ruach. See, this I would develop into a whole thing, a personality type. Remember, there's people below this map too that don't have nefesh either. Well, they have in other areas. Then there's someone who does the service in the form of ruach. Yeah, there's already excitement and stimulation of love and awe in his heart. Even if it's only a natural love and awe, and this is the love and awe, or love and respect, that is hidden, concealed in the soul, and the nefesh of every one from Israel. Oh, yeah, correct. This is the avanir, the love and awe concealed in the nefesh. Correct. Because every one of Israel has in his nature. We're not talking about through effort and work. Pashat, a natural love to the divine. The same thing, they have also a fear in nature that they're afraid to mutineer, to rebel. Really? Okay, some more than others. What's the foundation of this fear? Why is he a fear? What's the big thing? In other words, he's trying to point out it's not fear like you fear fire or you fear a punishment, because you don't want to be cut off, separated from godliness. So it's like more like a fear of losing your life. In other words, it's more essential than just he's not talking about childish fear here or some type of punishment fear. It's not yisheinu. Right? Yeah. Like the Friedrich Rebbe has a beautiful mashal. I think I once mentioned it. I only saw it once in a mimer. He's a diver, deep sea diving. The ones where you walk and you have the pipe connecting. Yeah.
The ones by Galdias of the Shuva, they have to be connected.
But the Friedrich Rebbe writes in the mimer. So the chutim of the mitzvahs are like the air lifelines, and that lifeline on this earth is what gives us life. So bottom line is, he's afraid of, because he doesn't want to be disconnected, doesn't want to be separate from godliness. For who are bittul tivi, sheyesh b'neshama Yisroel be'etzem, and this is a bittul tivi, a natural subjugation, a natural sublimation that's in the souls of Israel be'etzem, fundamentally. In the parentheses he adds, the mishum zehim b'pchinas eretz chayfetz, and because of this they're called eretz chayfetz, a desirable land. It's usually referred to a land that's fertile, meaning you have let's say arid land, you have eretz chayfetz, eretz haruya lezriya de mitzvahs, means a land that is roi, that is prepared, that is fitting to plant there, to sow mitzvahs mipnei habitl shebehem, and that's because of the bitl in the soul, like it says elsewhere. This is all Ruach. We're talking about the neshomas of Ruach. And the work is to reveal, to draw out this love and respect that should be revealed by spilus and excitement, morgeshes, in a sense that is sensed and conscious in the heart. And not externally, superficially, and only in a form of makif, means like not internalized, hovering. Here it doesn't mean makif transcendent. He means more like not. It's somewhat superficial. Because you could have. Is that the b'chitzein and makif?
Doesn't call it to action.
I understand, but that's what he means by b'chitzein and makif. That you could have bislavas gdel, you could have a great passion. Ve'ena shaykh l'maisa klal, it has nothing to do with action. You can get very excited, and you don't act on it. So in other words, what he's saying is that it has to come into an action. The goal here in Ruach is that it should be in an internal feeling, integrated feeling, and at least with the comprehension in his mind, and talumas libay, and that with talumas libay, that's what is concealed from his heart, in his heart. In other words, it may not be that it's fully manifest in his emotions in the deepest possible way, but there has to be some type of internalized feeling. In other words, it's not just some type of external excitement. You saw something and say, wow, that's great, and you move on. Like someone comes, let's say, to the Beis Hamikdash or to the Rebbe and saying, wow, this is awesome, and it doesn't have any impact. That's makif. That's like a tourist.
Spectator,
right. And you want it to have a hergish pnimi. At least hergish pnimi doesn't mean, like he's saying, it's ruach here. It's still TV, but there should be something that impacts him to the point that it brings him to action in avoiding the bad, and doing good. The primary work of a level of ruach is when the awakening of the love and awe are through a contemplation and through meditation, or comprehension and contemplation, because then they are in an internalized feeling, an integrated feeling that feels close to godliness. In other words, he's adding a key focus here. The bottom line is Ruach is not just action like nefesh. You have a feeling. a feeling that affects you. And he says the primary thing that affects is when a person contemplates on it. That makes it close, because when love comes through concentrate, through a meditation, through a contemplation, then he truly wants the divine. In other words, more likely, if you don't think about it, you're going to see a beautiful sight, you're just going to move on. But let's say you say, I see a beautiful sight. There were people who came to the Rebbe Rashab, others Rabbeim, they said, oh, very beautiful Rebbe, and so on and so forth. There was someone told me yesterday a story that someone came to Frierdiker Rebbe. Who was it? It was a very wealthy guy. And they asked him afterwards, what does he say? He said, he's very handsome. That was his impression. And what happened? He says, I gave him $50. I said, this is for you personally. Go buy something for yourself. Just, So you can be impressed by something very powerful, but you didn't give it 2 minutes thought. So you move on, like fireworks. For a moment it got your attention. Right, saying here, obviously, when you contemplate on it, you start saying, one second, what am I standing in front of? What am I seeing? Generally speaking, contemplation will create a hergish pnimi that you should truly want, desire. So in other words, you could have an emotional reaction, but it's very artificial. Or superficial, I should say, not artificial. Superficial, meaning it's not going to last. Doesn't mean it's not real. But, and here is that it creates that type of Neshomo. And it gives energy, it infuses energy and light into the performance of mitzvahs. And it also repairs the nefesh habamis. This is still not Ruach. One second. So why is it only Ruach? This sounds pretty powerful. This sounds like contemplate. One second. So he says, because the contemplation here is only that which is relevant and commensurate to the emotions. You're not talking about a sitting down, a meditation, a deep contemplation on the thing itself. You're talking about something that instead of just letting it pass by and just getting excited and moving on, you're focusing a bit on it. But it's still chitzenius hamechen. It's the outer part of intelligence. And now he goes to the third level. And then someone who's on the level of the Neshomo, his primary work is through comprehension and contemplation under the divine comprehension and contemplation, the essence of mechen, and sensing and feeling God in a fundamental way. Here's the other way around. And then that inevitably, automatically generates midas. The midas come automatically. And they're also in a mature way. The midas are mature. Like he says elsewhere. He doesn't elaborate here, but just to briefly say a few words. It's really, think of it, let's say a child, because sometimes later we're going to talk Ibra Yanik and Mogen. There's 3 stages of maturity. When you're talking, let's say, a 5-year-old, 4-year-old, you're training them to say Moidani, to wash Negelvasa, to bench, to daven, to say thank you. Or just anything. There it's primarily Nehi. It's Maisa. The focus is on action. The focus is on developing good habits, good manners, and so on and so forth. There's like he said before, it's avoidus evidus kabbalah sale. They're just focusing on action and just doing what you have to do. Like he says, there's no need for ispilus on the lev, nothing in the mind, and so on. Doesn't even know the kavanah of the mitzvah. The child is being taught about. Just give me an example. That, of course, in Aveda for adult is also that level. We also have that stage in our own, that type of Aveda. Level 2 would say, I don't know the exact years, but let's say 5 to 12, 5 to 13, 14. Where there, you can expect more than just pure action. You expect the child to initiate, think about it. But we all know they're still dealing with emotions. The child is primarily an emotional human being. You can't expect the child to really have the ability, that distance and detachment of reflection that comes with a mature mind. That's the reality. But it's also no longer just Maisa. So you have feelings, But the feelings are you have feelings, but you have intelligence. But intelligence is focused around the person's feelings. They can begin to understand, and obviously infuses. They'll do something, not just say Maidani or be nice, say thank you. They'll do it a little more with seichel, and therefore with more commitment. I just want to say, it doesn't say the first Avodah is less Maisa than the second level Ruach. It just doesn't have those elements in it. And from a little child, you can't expect more. That's what it is. But here you're already talking out, there's an Inyan Pnimi going on, Hergish Pnimi. But to say, like he says, to use these words, here the Binah is only what's connected to Midas feelings. And then comes the level of maturity that happens when we mature into adults. I mean, obviously adolescents and teenagers are still not there, but they're getting there. So let's say age 20, or whatever the age, the way it's supposed to be. Now your mind has developed to the point where you really can withhold an emotion. You can control yourself. You can expect, by bar mitzvah, why do we put on film? Because you can control yourself. Simple level. You don't get distracted.
You just said 20.
No, bar mitzvah begins Gadlus HaMech, and I said the process begins 13, but 20 I would say is the full mature stage. That's what I meant. But in development, it's not exactly to the day. It's a development. It's exactly 3, 4.
They don't punish until 20, 21.
Right. Exactly. So I'm just saying there's 3 stages of development. Exactly what year, and they all process. There's a point when you're 12, you don't suddenly something happens. It's just that 12 is going to be a little more mature than 11. 11 is like that, The point being here is that I'm just giving an example of what would be an Aveda of Neshama. Of course, for adults now, the same 3. Because remember, in Aveda, you can be chronologically an adult and much more mature intellectually, but Aveda-wise, you can still be a child. You can still be in the level of nefesh, ruach, or neshama. So these are 3 different levels. As a matter of fact, it's mashma from here actually that their whole lives are destined to be a nefesh, because that's where their neshama comes from. There's some people destined to be ruach, some people are neshama. Yeah. That doesn't mean there's always a scholars. It means everyone's responsible to learn and to have a lev. But the question is, what's primary? What's the primary? It's almost like kehanim b'duchanom, levim b'vidosam, and Yisroel b'maimodam. That type of. Each one has their role, so to speak. So that's what he's qualifying now in the parentheses. And even though we discussed earlier in chapter 45 the mogen, the bria, b'derech klayim b'chinas mogen hashayach l'midas, here he just said naran is bria yitzir asiya, and in chapter 45 he said that the primary mogen of bria is in general is an intelligence that's commensurate in relation to midas, which here he calls ruach yitzira l'midas levad. Yesh leimer, we can say sheyesh b'zeh hefesh b'malachim l'neshamas. We can say there's a difference between the angels and the souls. The b'neshamas b'chinas neshama u'b'chinas atzmas hamechen. In neshamas, the level of neshama of the higher level of is atzmas hamechen. U'madregach atzil shumashal l'mayla masagas hanivraim. Ve'en chabad shel ein sei baruch hu. So when you talk about neshamas, mogen be'etzem they have in bria. And if you want to go to that which is Chabad of Ein Sof, that's not Tzilus. That's higher from Asagas and Nivraim. Like he says in Tanya chapter 39. And by Malachim, in other words, Malachim is what we meant in Bria. Malachim is Be'ikar Meichen Shaykh L'Midas. Okay, that's what he qualifies. So in other words, in Bria itself, you have 2 levels of Meichen. One is connected to Midas, more like Yitzira, that he's speaking here, which would be the Malachim, the angels, and Neshama is more Mochen itself, and Atzilus then would be beyond human intelligence, would be divine intelligence, basically. And in general, this is the Aveda of others that Atzilus is Aveda higher, is super rational service. That's that's not comprehended. And Zariya of Chachma. And generally, basically goes like this. In Atzilus, you have Yud Kei Vav Kei. You have Chachma, Binah, Zah, Midas, and Malchus. In the 4 worlds, Chachma is nested in Atzilus. We spoke about that. Binah is nested in Bria. Zah, Midas is nested in Yitzira, and Asiya, and Malchus is nested in Asiya. So you have the Abiyah within Atzilus, and you have them in the four worlds. So what he's saying basically is like this. We talked about Atzilus, we spoke about earlier. Now we're speaking about the three things, nefesh, ruach, neshama, bria, yitzira, asiya, is really Binah, Midas, and Malchus, which would be intelligence, like you said, mogen be'etzem. That would be bria by neshamas. Yitzira is when it's already, the mogen is connected to Midas, that's Zah. And asiya would be, my primary work is action. And Atzilus is like Chachma, the Ria of Chachma, which is really higher than intelligence, by Neshamas. That's how he's structuring it here. So he's reconciling what he says in chapter 45, that Bria is Mechem, that's for Malachim, that's for angels. It's a different level. But that's here, it's more focusing like that. So Atzilus really is, in context of our discussion here, this may answer the Adeinu Zenu. Because Adeinu Zenu is not Atzilus. So it's giving the strength in the Avodah of Malchus, because he keeps saying Malchus k'fi shehi ba'atzilus. He says it here and earlier. He says Ba'adeinu Zenu says Malchus k'fi shehi ba'atzilus, meaning not in the way it's in Bria. So Malchus and Atzilus is the level of Adeinu Zenu, but it still doesn't answer where it fits with Atzilus. Anyway, what he did here was we finished now. He spoke how the makifim of these three, Adeinu Zenu, misgav ba'adeinu, Tzur misgoveinu is bria neshama, mogen yisheinu is Ruach Yitzira, and misgav ba'adeinu is the makif of Asiya and nefesh. But he didn't explain how each is each. That he did not explain. And I don't think he's going to explain it. I think the next chapter is going to talk now how it's in Shuva. But maybe there he explains it. Okay.
You know, in your analogy of the age, 1 to 5, 6 to 12, 13 to 20, do you have anything that goes after that? From 20 years old after? You moved up from nefesh, ruach, neshama, right? To 20. What about Ayin Beis? Would you also apply that to an analogy?
It's a good question. Probably not. Because Chai Yechida are, number one, you can't really access them through Avodah. They come when you have your nefesh, ruach, neshama complete. They emerge, and I have to see how it fits to these Maimorim here. But generally speaking, Chai Yechida are like one example. For example, would be that 3 tefillas every day. The davening every day is nefesh, ruach, neshama. On Shabbos and Yontif we add Musaf, that's Chaya, and on Yom Kippur we add Ne'ilah, which is Yechida. That's one way to look at it. That means really, it's not, even if you're 80 years old, you're only davening 3 times a day. So you never get Chai Yechida through your maturity and development. You get it through your Avodah. Or several times a year when it's just given to you. I don't think it's associated with any maturity stage. I'm almost sure it's not, because of makifim, and I would say they're not. Nefesh Shul is as pnimius. See, maturity is pnimius. And the Neshama, as soon as a baby is born, they have Yechida in them, even on Yom Kippur. Except, obviously, they don't access it. When you're an adult, you can access it. Nefesh Shul Neshama is the faculties in our power. Chai Yechida, you really cannot. You have it has an impact on us, is what he's been saying here. But it's not like you can actually do anything to go there.
The reason I asked is because I was thinking that when it says level in that see this is Ria B'Chachma, right? Ria?
Right.
That after 20, what would he say that a person really goes out and gets life experience, job experience? I mean,
okay.
He sees the world.
No. Let me tell you how I'll tell you how I would phrase it. You have to remember the 3 stages I mentioned is called in Kabbalah Ibur, Yenika, and Mogen. And in the Jewish philosophers call it Mutva, Murgish, and Muskel. You ever hear these expressions? Yeah, later. Yeah, at length. Ibur means literally gestation, pregnancy. Yenika is nursing. And Mogen is intelligence. So in the Eitz Chaim, there's actually a shar called Shar Ibur, Yenika, Mogen. Sometimes you see the Rosh Hashanah says Ayin Yud Mem. So later in Ayin Beis in this volume is at length how the mind matures and in process trains the midas. So Ibri and Mechan are 3 stages. They never talk about other stages. What happens is, when you reach mogen, and mogen the godless, mature, then new things start emerging. But it's never discussed as like a 4th or 5th. Now, on the other hand, there's the Pirkei Avos. So you have Ben Chomesh LeMikra, Ben Esr LeMishnah, Ben Chamesh LeGemara, Ben Shemnes LeChuppah, Ben Esrim LeKayach, Ben Shleishim LeGvura, Ben Arboim LeBinah. So based on that, you can definitely create a model. You see Binah. So what does that mean? So Binah is what you call experience. Because nothing happens at 40 that's physically equivalent to what happens at 20. At 20, we physically know that stage, that there's parts of the brain that actually finish. That's why insurance companies, by the way, they have proof that that people under 20, 22 or 23 years old are much more prone to accidents because they're prone to decisions that are much more spontaneous. They don't have, and they have statistics to show it. Not just they're more reckless, because their minds are not. Also, Rahman al-Islam, many bipolar and others happen in that age, at 19, 20, because that's when the brain is final development. And there's physical proof. The brain, like when you feel a child's right here is very soft. Then it gets hard. The brain actually goes through real physical shifts. So I can't say later, Ben Arboim Labina, you don't go through a physical shift, but you go through a life change. There's life stages. There's a maturity. Yeah, that sometimes comes with it.
Well, I'd rather say leave the das as nine Neshomo.
Right, exactly. And interesting, there's 2 opinions, whether Arboim Labina, is it when you turn 40, or is it 40 years from when you heard the thing from your teacher? Yeah. But there's no question, even according to the opinion, everyone holds that something happens when you're 40, not the day you're 40, but the general stage, that definitely is a maturity in a person's life. I could tell you that, I could testify to that. I'm not saying we're necessarily wiser, but we definitely... By all means. So the point I'm making here is, bottom line is, okay, he's finished the nefesh, ruach, neshama. Should we continue? What should we do here? Let me see. There's another... Huh?
Sunday.
No, but I've got plenty to do. It's not so simple. So you know what? I'm going to just sum it up and then we'll stop here. We'll continue. We have plenty to do this.
You have a Tzur.
Yeah, I'm going to do the Kitzur right now. The Kitzur on top of 146. Kitzur. V'hine ima uzifus lebarta mana v'kshitala.
Did you see in the Torah talk about lending?
Did you see it?
The Targum
Yeah.
is zifas.
On which word?
Novia, to borrow.
So someone mentioned that.
Zifas.
Yeah. That
It
a zifus means to borrow?
Yeah.
says in the Targum.
I think it means here. He used before. He said azifus. Remember, he said the word azifus right here. He said, "Umasha ima izifus, hushiyeh b'chin zarotzi al dehamarirus."
No, it says right here. Ima is zifus lebrata mama. That means she lends her daughter her clothing to her.
You think it means lending?
According to the Targum, maybe it wasn't.
Okay, fine. No, I'm accepting. I'm not saying otherwise. I think it means more than lending. However, it's mashma. It's more than lending, especially the aveda part. Lending means it's like it belongs to Binah, just temporarily Malchus.
No, she's empowering her daughter by her wearing that.
Okay, I understand, but why is the word azifus? You see here, there is one place where he's medayik. He says, "Masha ima izifus mana hushiyeh b'chin zarotzi."
She's it's really nice. She's not owning it. Maybe you could say.
It's perfect because you know why it's perfect?
Yeah.
Because it's only maki. The shooting are only maki. It's not a kinyan till Yom Kippur. So it's just lending it to the child. Doesn't get
Okay, that's good because it's only a makif and it's only lending. And it's not becoming yours. It's not.
She doesn't own it. She doesn't take ownership over it.
And Malchus, right, and in Yom Kippur, you said what? About Kabbalah, where did he say that?
It's not Mitzvah.
Where did they say that?
Pay attention to this.
No, you're right. I want to just see it because it may be correct, may be a very good point. Sounds good. I think it was earlier.
When she wears the clothes, she has that.
They said somewhere that kishutim do not become part of who you are. Okay, let me do the summary. Huh?
It has to be in this period because he didn't mention the idea before.
No, it's definitely in this period. There's nothing to talk about this in this period. No, it's the middle of the page somewhere. Where do you see that?
In the kitchen.
Yeah, but that's from the.
It's going to be in the same approximate place in the body.
Yeah, right here. It's right here in the middle of Kufman Dalet.
Okay. Okay. Good. So Zifus Labarta to his daughter Mano, a garment Vikshita's law. It's the jewelry, the ornaments. That's the transmission from the root of the soul to the soul as it manifests in the body. Lius will be misham, that it should be custom. You should seek out from there to seek out the divine. Machshava dibra ma'isa the nefesh habamis, and the thought, speech, and action of the animal soul. Through this should happen the crying out and the yitzia and the freeing yourself. But take with the intensity of a desire, of the intensity of a yearning. And also the animal soul is transformed through this. And specifically when the crying out is from the animal soul. The power of this is from the 13 attributes of compassion that are called kishutin, they're called ornaments. Because they're not, they become one. They're not fundamentally, essentially unified with the individual. Okay. Then another thing, another interpretation of the meaning of garment, the borrowing. You say, okay, the lending of these garments of Binah to Malchus. The second thing is that this transmission should be a Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shemayim, just not a silent one, but a revealed way internally and atzmi, essentially. And then Malchus, which means the soul inside the body, is called Adon Loshen Tchar, masculine, that draws down the essence of the divine light. Adenu Zenu is the makif of Malchus, the way it's not Atzilus. Tzur, mogen, misgav, makifim the naran. And the next three, Tzur, mogen, misgav, which are all makifim, they all talk about a power outside of the entity itself, whether it's strength or a shield or what do we say, misgav? Misgav. Yeah. makifim the naran, these are the makifim, the transcendent forces of nefesh, ruach, and neshama. Nefesh kima mitzvahs b'asiyah b'pel mamish. Nefesh is performance of mitzvahs in action. Ruach haved b'av v'yirah b'hergish primi sha'adei is bonus. Ruach is the service with love and awe. Refuge. B'hergish primi, an internal feeling through contemplation. Neshama haved b'chinas mechin, and neshama is the work with the mind. V'amid is b'ayim mamela, and the emotions already come automatically. Okay, we shall stop here. We did the end of chapter 77, page 145, top of 146 in the summary.